Okay. So, something that you're all quite familiar with and used to at the start of your meetings, we're going to spend a little moment checking in with ourselves. You've probably rushed into this session. You've had a busy morning or perhaps start to your day. So, this is just a time to check in, drop into your body, and reflect on how you're feeling in this moment. And if you feel comfortable to share in the chat function, it's always interesting. It helps to create that sort of safe, open, honest space. If you feel comfortable sharing 1 to 2 words to describe how you're feeling, please pop those into the chat function now. We're going to be talking a lot about feelings today and emotions. So this is a chance to sort of get warmed up into that. Okay, thank you for sharing. We've got happy, chilling, energy in motion. Love that. Okay, thank you for the update. Brilliant. We'll look forward to seeing you soon, Mitch. Hungry, peaceful, recovering from a short, sharp project delivery. Okay, yeah, do what you need to do to recover in this next 2 hours. This is time for you to connect inwards. That will help with that recovery process. Calm, anticipatory and grateful, tired and achy, hungry. Ooh, what's hungry? Hungry. Oh, right. I thought it was a new one. I thought it was a new one. Rushed but excited about the session ahead. Excellent. Thank you. Well, I'm buzzing. I'm feeling energized. The nerves are also sort of coursing because, as I say, we've got a lot to get through. All right, thank you so much. Um, as I've mentioned, we are going to talk about emotions as part of today's session. They are data, signals from our body to help us make sort of informed decisions and choices if only we listen to them. So this is sort of part of the practice. Okay, now just reflect. Are there any distractions that are occupying your thoughts right now? And again, if you would like to pop them into the chat function, no pressure to do that. But again, it helps to create an open, honest space today. Yeah, I hear that. Home life stuff. We're absolutely, and let's remind ourselves and be compassionate with ourselves that yes, we might be in a work setting here, but there's always stuff going on, isn't there, outside in our personal lives. And, we shouldn't have to, and we don't believe that you can keep the two separate. They're of course going to impact how we are thinking, how we're feeling, and therefore how we're showing up. So bring compassion always to yourself and to your colleagues. We never know unless we ask what's going on for people. All right, thank you so much. So we just acknowledge up front that we know that you're particularly busy at the moment. So this might feel like a bit of a luxury spending 2 hours here together, but even the discipline of taking time for yourself, for your personal development in those busy periods, knowing it's going to help you in the long run, that's part of the practice of personal development. And this is permission for you to do that. So let's take a moment to mentally park any of those distractions for the session, knowing that doesn't mean that they're not important, not at all, but it just gives us time to focus on ourselves, fill up your own cup, so it were, so that you can then be the best, in the best space to support others when you leave this session. And it may be that you want to check in with a colleague after this session to support each other if you think someone might need that extra support. All right, so thank you so much. Very quickly, the program objectives is opportunity for you to connect inwards with yourself, to learn more about the type of person you are now and the type of person that you want to be, and how you can perhaps, close that gap a little bit. And this is about in and out of the workplace. All of this stuff is transferable into our personal lives too. This is time for you to connect with each other, to learn from each other. We learn so much by hearing other people's experiences, knowing that it's not only us that feels a certain way sometimes in situations. Sometimes it can feel quite isolating, can't it? So we know this is part of feedback. This is feedback that we've listened to, and this is time for you to do just that. And we'll be sharing really practical tools and techniques that you can put into practice straight away to help you be the happiest and healthiest versions of you. Okay, connection, as we've seen, is a word that we're repeating quite a lot. It is the red thread of this Human Leaders program. So it's something we will return to again and again. So what is connection? We share here a definition by Brené Brown, someone we lean on a lot. Professor, written lots of books, and expert in much of what we will be talking about. Brené describes connection as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued. So let's just repeat that again. The energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued. It's a human need of ours to be seen, heard, and valued. And connection is therefore the antidote to many of the challenges and struggles that we face in today's modern world. The program principles, very quickly, all views are welcomed and encouraged. Share what you feel comfortable sharing. We promise that what we share is very practical and that you can put it into action straight away. Additional support is always available for you. I mentioned the one-to-one coaching. And, we're always listening, whatever your feedback. We want this program to feel as relevant and impactful for you. So do let us know. It's our goal to create a really inclusive and respectful environment for sharing, for learning and growing together. So we ask you to bring a human first approach, to be open-minded. We don't know what we don't know, and curious about how you can develop as a person. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Nikki at this point.
Thank you, Sarah, and good morning, good afternoon to everybody again. Let's get into it, giving you some time and space to connect more fully with yourself. It's not often when we go about our busy day jobs, our hectic lives, that we get the opportunity to step back, lift up the lid a little bit, and get curious about ourselves. So this is an opportunity to bring some more self-awareness into the picture. In turn, the more aware that we are of ourselves, this can lead onwards to self-compassion. But this stuff is a lifetime's work. So no, we're not going to solve everything in a couple of hours or indeed by the end of this program, but we really hope that you embrace this opportunity to keep curious, and to get friendly and familiar with yourselves, knowing in turn that this is what it takes to be the healthiest and most high functioning version of ourselves. Once we've got to know ourselves, that's going to give us the greatest chance of better connecting with other people around us, but it does start with us first. So we're going to ease you in very gently, I jest, with this huge, great big question: who are you? So I'm going to ask you in a moment to spend a few minutes considering this. Don't overthink this. This is an opportunity just to reflect inwards, to connect with this subject matter, and to give yourself an opportunity to consider, who are you today in this moment, safe in the knowledge that this question would probably be answered differently depending on what day we ask the question. So I'm going to give you a really quick 3 minutes. This is going to go super quickly, I'm sure, to respond to this question: who am I? and respond with as many ways as you can, starting with I am. If you've got a pen and paper or note capturing materials, please jot this down. We want this to sort of be sort of in real time that you work through this exercise. After 3 minutes, we'll join back together, and maybe there's going to be a person or two who feels brave enough to share their answers. But please know first and foremost that this exercise is for you in this moment. So I'm going to ask you to switch your cameras off so you can sit behind the screen, and we'll take 3 minutes to answer this question, and then we will get back together. So who are you? I am. So popping cameras back on. And we do this exercise as well, so I am well aware how quickly 3 minutes for an exercise like that goes, particularly if you haven't done anything like this before. So please don't worry if you haven't got too far. This is all about just getting into this subject and beginning to connect more fully with yourself. So I will read through where I got to. It's different every single time that I do this exercise. So that's my first point. There's no judgment that we bring to this exercise. It's a way of connecting with yourself and just seeing what comes through. And then if anybody else is up for it, I'd love to hear one or two other people's input today. But let me start. And I don't even know what's going to come out here, actually, because sometimes I start writing and I don't know what's been emptied out. So here we go. I am Nikki, a name that's never really felt quite right. Well, I've never written that down before, so that's a new one on me. I am a partner, an auntie, a sister, a friend, a daughter, and an ever trying my best to be a stepmom type figure. It's complicated. I'm a co-founder of Point 3. I am wanting to help people to connect with the truth of who they are in a way that helps them and helps them to help others. I'm writing really quickly, and I'm wishing I had more time for this because I'm enjoying this place to get stuff out. I'm curious to know how the group have got on. So that is where I got to, and I can barely read my writing actually because I was going so quickly. So that's what came out for me today. Would anybody else like to share theirs? They're a brave person willing to go there.
Go on then, I will.
Kathy, thank you so much. Over to you, Kathy.
So I've literally just scribbled a few notes. So for those who don't know me, I'm Kathy. I'm a working mum. I've lived in the Middle East for a few years now. Previous to that, I had a really exciting job, and now I've come into another exciting field, which is events. Um, and I've put here that I'm very caring about the teams that I work with, both all the way from the top all the way down to the bottom. It doesn't matter to me, you know, at that hierarchy. I quietly get on with the work that I need to do, often working well over the hours, never tell anybody, but I thrive on the challenges, and I'm driven by the teams that I work with. So if I'm working with a great team, I will put all the hours in. If I'm working with a team I don't particularly like, you get the bare minimum. And that's what I've wrote. Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you, Kathy. Gosh, you got a lot in there in that short space of time. So kudos to you for that. And beautiful. We've learned so much about Kathy in that short exercise, a bit about work, a bit about home life, how you identify. I heard values coming in there. I heard the word caring, and behaviours as well, how you show up. So thank you, Kathy. That's a really generous share, and I really appreciate you jumping in as well. We've got time for one more. If anybody else would like to share yours, now is your chance. Anybody want to take the baton?
I can go.
Ah, brilliant. Thank you so much, Claire. Off you go.
So I'm Claire. I'm a mother and a wife. I am someone who values friendship. I am caring and honest. I'm curious, love learning new things, traveling. I'm quite an independent person and resilient. I'm someone who enjoys being outside, outdoors. At work, I'm someone who overthinks things, but cares deeply, certainly in my line of work, about finding the right people for the right jobs.
Lovely, Claire, thank you. And again, we heard a little bit about Claire in work, Claire out of work, thought, how cognitive functioning works, some overthinking comes in. We had some feelings come in and some beautiful values. I've really loved hearing about curiosity. That's definitely something that we'll be talking about a lot within our time together. So thank you, Claire, thank you, Kathy, for taking on that opportunity to share. And I hope some of your colleagues got to know you a little bit better. Out of interest, and I'll just stop sharing now, how many people wrote things about work? Just put your hand up if there's anything on your list that was work related. I did this time. So typically when we ask this question, it's a 50-50 split. So a lot of the time when we go through this exercise, people actually don't get to the point of thinking about themselves in the context of work, which is a really good reminder, even though we're doing this in a work setting, that people are so much more than their persona at work. Our lives are rich, our lives are complex. So that's an important sort of message of this exercise. Remember that we are human, and that goes beyond who we are in the workplace. So the more that we can sort of get to know ourselves and get to know each other, we're going to forge those really meaningful connections. And then the second point I want to make, which I sort of alluded to earlier, is that we will all answer this exercise in a slightly different way, depending on the day, what is showing up in our lives in this moment. So a reminder as well that we are not fixed creatures. Human beings are fluid. We ebb and flow, and we all have the potential to grow and change. So we're really going to be leaning into curiosity, as I say, and growth mindset as we move through our time together. So thank you everyone for having a go at that exercise, embracing that. Can I just check, Farah, did you have a question, or was that your hand up?
I don't know how it went up. You
Yeah,
can proceed.
no
I'll try to put it down.
Wanted to check, but thank you for raising your hand to that question. If anybody does have any questions as we go through, feel free to unmute, pop your hand up, or drop the question in the chat function, and we will endeavour to get to as many of those as we can. Okay, we're going to push forward now and lean on some theory around the frame of reference. And I know that we've got many mental health first aiders in the group, which is brilliant to see. So this will feel hopefully familiar. The frame of reference is a term used to refer to our individual filter of reality. The frame of reference model shows that the way we make sense of the world, of other people and ourselves is unique to each one of us. We all see things slightly differently, and so we treat ourselves and other people differently too. So this theory is a great starting point to help us get a bit more sort of friendly and familiar with who we are. Unless we have the identical DNA as somebody else and have lived their exact same moment-to-moment life experience, we're of course all going to have our own unique perspective, our own unique window on the world. So we're going to spend some time sort of understanding our individual frame of reference a little bit more. Before we go there, just to illustrate why this is important, in the chat function, please, we see a person in a picture here. What do you think the person is thinking? There's absolutely no rights or wrongs. Thanks, Trevor, for getting us going. The coffee is not strong enough. I hear that. This coffee tastes bitter. Okay. Contemplating life. Why did I wear this hat? What else? What do we think this person is thinking? Should I have another? Another what, Mitch? I'm interested. What do you think they're drinking? Why is my coffee black? They're late again. Why hasn't he turned up? Brilliant. Thanks everybody for embracing that exercise, thinking about life. Where did I lose my glove? Where are my friends? Yeah, so many different ways that we can answer this question. Now, of course, unless we ask this person what it is they're thinking, we're never going to know the answer. But what we do so often as human beings is we bring our own assumptions, we project things onto them. We can bring biases and judgments, perceptions, and those all come from our own frame of reference. Whether we know we're doing this or not, it's a completely normal part of what it is to be a human being. It's just about identifying it. So what I am getting from the group is that there's a lot of coffee drinkers, because nobody assumed that this person was drinking tea or a whiskey or water in their cup as well. So that's just an example of how we will inevitably bring judgments and assumptions based on our own frame of reference. And the more that we can be aware of this, the greater chance we're going to have of parking our own stuff when we seek to understand the perspective of somebody else. So let's dig into ourselves now. On the screen here, you'll see a very sort of crude window, which represents your frame of reference, your window on the world. It's filled here with many elements that make up your personal frame of reference. These are going to be everything from things that are completely outside of your control, so where you were born, for example, and spent your early childhood, through to things that you have brought into your life. We're going to have your life experiences. It will include how you identify, through to things like your values, your views, and your aspirations. So what I'm going to ask you to do now, again, we're going to go through this really quickly, but you will have opportunity outside of the session if you want to dig deeper. But I'm going to give you just 3 minutes again to self-reflect on this and give a response to as many aspects of your frame of reference as you can. Some of these will be really quick and easy to answer. Others might need a bit more reflection and consideration. But again, grab your pen and paper, switch your cameras off, and spend 3 minutes giving a response to as many aspects of your frame of reference as you can. And wherever you got to, don't worry if you didn't get too far through this, you will have this to work on if you'd like to outside of the session. But what I'd love to know from the group, please, into the chat function, is which one aspect of that frame of reference feels most important to you in this moment. So which element of the frame of reference, we don't need to say why at this point, but what feels most important to you from your frame of reference in this moment? So pop into the chat function. Let's see if there are any themes, what differences there are in the group. Age and family, we've got social life, community, political views coming in from a few people, aspirations, age and family, values, aspirations coming in a few times, family there. Again, anybody else want to share? What feels important to you? Family, values, and health. Family situation would be mine today. And that's an important point of this, is that this, again, if I ask this question on a different day, you will likely give a different answer. Faith coming in there as well. So, important point of this exercise, we're all going to have our own frame of reference, our own unique view on the world, and different things are going to feel important to us at different points in time. That's really important for us to acknowledge, so that we can give those things the due care and attention that they warrant. And it's also a great reminder that we're all going to have different things going on. So, you know, family situation may feel really important for me today, but that might not feel relevant to somebody else that I'm working with. And that's okay. But the really sort of key part to this is understand ourselves, and where we feel comfortable doing so, to talk openly with our colleagues, particularly people that we're working most closely with, so we can get to know each other, understand what's going on in each other's lives, and get to support each other in a way that's really sort of effective and meaningful. Remember that definition of connection, the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued. The more that we're able to create that energy, the deeper that connection is going to get. So on that note, we're momentarily going to pop you into breakout groups. We'll give you 5 minutes for an exercise. And we'd like you to explore how an area of your frame of reference may influence how you show up in the workplace, either helpfully and or unhelpfully. So I'm going to walk you through an example, and then we'll give you 5 minutes to explore this with another person. So mental health, as many of you know, those of you who have trained as a mental health first aider with myself, you'll know that mental health is a really important subject to me, and has been from my childhood. There was a point around 15 years ago when my mental health was in a really challenging place. And as part of my recovery from the mental health challenge, I went and retrained as a clinical hypnotherapist. That was as a hobby. I did it at weekends for fun. It was something that I was interested in because I wanted to learn more about our minds, human behavior, psychology. That was something I felt really passionate about. It was a hobby first and foremost, but it led into my role at the time. I was working for an experiential agency. I was on the client services side, but I was invited to take on a role as head of people on account of all of these sort of personal lived experiences, as well as things I've been doing in my professional life as well. And of course, that all became a stepping stone to starting up Point 3 in the work that we're doing here. And we set up Point 3 8 years ago. So how has all of this shown up in a helpful way in the workplace? Well, I like to think that I am an ambassador and an advocate for mental health matters, and that it's helped me to be sort of as non-judgmental as possible when it comes to mental health, emotional health, and that I can bring empathy to conversations with people in the workplace and outside of it. However, there have been times where I have assumed that other people are as open as I am to talking about thoughts and feelings and mental health. And that has meant that I've lost connection with individuals. So this is an example of how my frame of reference has influenced how I've shown up in the workplace in a helpful way, but also sometimes in a way that has hindered me developing connections with people. So that's an example of how you could approach this exercise, but it's completely over to you. Use it in a way just to spark a bit of discussion with a colleague. No right or wrong way to go about this exercise. Just notice how different parts of the frame of reference perhaps begin to link up. We're going to give you, as I say, 5 minutes to explore this, and nominate a spokesperson at the end. It'd be lovely to hear 1 or 2 reflections from your discussions. Before we break you out, are there any questions on what we're encouraging you to do here? Just have a go, see what comes up, and go have some connections with a colleague. Thanks, Sarah. We'll open the breakout groups, and we'll see you in 5 minutes. Welcome back. That time gets absolutely gobbled away, doesn't it, in a breakout room? So wherever you got to, Please feel free to keep the conversations going outside of the session. We know that it's a rude ejection from the breakout rooms. But any reflections? Would anybody like to share something from their breakout room?
I was just saying to Shally, like one thing that I've never really like focused on before is like political views. So like wrote that down a few times, and then obviously like with filmmaking and storytelling, I just feel like it's like now more than ever it becomes like even more important, which drives me further to want to do more and to tell more stories and to get out there more in the field and to bring awareness to some of these topics which are tied to the political situations around the world.
Love that. Thank you, Kieran. And political views came through quite strongly, actually, didn't it, in the chat function? It's a really good example of actually for one person, what's going on politically, political views feels really, really important and integral to who they are and how they're living their lives. And for somebody else, it might not be on the radar. But I love what you did there about sort of linking it into your role as well. So sort of you're traveling through the frame of reference there. Nice, thank you. Anybody else? One other person want to share a reflection?
I think I know, Johnny, you wanted to. Okay, I'll say what she wanted to say.
Yeah, you're a spokesperson.
Go for it, Kathy.
Are you trying to say
Jonas.
I've got a big mouth? Is that what you're trying to say? So we looked at two things on both what's important to me and what's important with Johnny, and both faith and values, they interlink. And so when we turn up to work every day, so faith is a big part of life, but also forms part of how we are in the workplace, and that links into the values as well, the internal values that we hold. And so how we treat people every day. And what's important, and certainly what came out from me, is it's how people are treated and how we respond to everyday situations, not just when somebody's looking. And I see that every day on the sites that I work on. I'm a big one. I sit there and I observe body language and all that kind of stuff. And so it's about being kind to people every day, be loyal, have integrity, and I always say, do what's right, and not just when someone's looking. And that both from our own values and from a faith perspective, it all interlinks, and that's how we go about our daily business. I think that's
Lovely.
about it, isn't it?
Look at all those love hearts coming through. Thank you, Joni. Thank you, Kathy, for representing your group. It's actually lesser spotted. Faith is one that comes out less, but when it does, I absolutely love faith coming into this discussion. So thank you for bringing that element of the frame of reference into it. Values is a really important piece here, and we're going to come on to specifically sort of focus some time on values. But I loved what you said there, Kathy, about, you know, our values are something that should feel important to us when people aren't looking every bit as much as when they are looking. That's a really big test of what's important to us in terms of how we show up and who we want to be. So a lovely sort of lead up to where we're going next. Thank you so much, everybody, for having those conversations. Do keep them going. As I say, it's those small moments of meaningful conversation that can drive that connection that we're talking about. So to sort of sum up this section on frame of reference, just want you to sort of reflect on this quote. To understand the full picture of another person, we need to first step out of our own frame. So today we are spending time within our own frame of reference, really considering who we are. And then as we move forward through that, we're going to consider the need to park our own frame of reference as we really seek to understand the perspective and the full picture of another person. It's when we first know ourselves that we are in turn truly able to understand another. But Kathy and Joni, you did take us there to values, so thank you. And it's nice to sort of have seen values come through in the conversation so far today. You may or may not have spent time considering what your personal values are, but we're going to give you some time to do that now. And again, this is another exercise that you'll likely want to spend a little bit more time reflecting on. Sarah and I really took about a year last year. We've been doing a lot of values work to really make sure our values felt right. So values work can take time to really sort of hone and ensure your personal values feel right for you. So values, how we define them, are what matters to me and the way I want to show up in the world. And again, Kathy, I loved what you said there about this isn't just when people are looking, but this is also in the quieter moments when we're sort of on our own as well. So we believe that your values provide a blueprint for how you want to approach important areas of your life. So things like your work and career, friends and family, caregiving, hobbies and interests, learning and development, your community involvement, activism, faith and religion, and self-care. That's not an exhaustive list. That's a non-exhaustive list there. So sometimes values, in other schools of thoughts, family could be a value as an example, faith could be a value. However, we're looking at values as a way that help us approach these important areas of our lives. So on the screen, you'll see a long list of values. Again, it's not an exhaustive list, so there might be others that feel important to you. Please add those in if that fits for you. We're going to give you some time to look at this list and basically whittle it down. So typically you might start with around 20 values that feel important to you and then whittle your list down. Ultimately, we're aiming to find 3 values that feel most relevant and meaningful to you today. Again, knowing that our values are going to shift and flex over time. So this is all about a snapshot of what feels important to you at this stage of your life. Are there any questions on the exercise, what we're asking you to do? If not, we're going to give you 5 minutes. See how you get on. Aim to get to 3. You might not get there. 5 minutes isn't that much time to work through an exercise like this, but hopefully there'll be at least 1 or 2 that jump out at you that feel really, really important. Again, switch your cameras off, sit behind the camera and take 5 minutes here. Cameras back on, please. And wherever you got to, and as I say, this might take a bit more time and reflection, particularly if you've not done an exercise like this before. But we'd love to know what sorts of values we have in the space today. So in the chat function, please share 1 value that feels most significant to you right now. It's always interesting to see if we've got crossovers. I mean, they're all lovely values, aren't they? There's nothing in there that isn't anything other than a gift. So we've got authenticity, we've got justice. Farah's going to spend a bit more time getting to your 1. I mean, there's so many, aren't there? This is not an easy exercise, this one. Like I say, we do this work a lot, but we're constantly sort of reviewing and reflecting on our values. We've got curiosity. Sorry, I've now seen your follow-up, Farah. So you've got your 3, well done. Loyalty, humility, and depth. Lovely. We've got kindness. Any other values that feel particularly significant that you want to share? Hope. Uplifting others. Kathy's got a longer list: integrity, respect, equality, loyalty, legacy, leadership, courage, and caring. Nice. Well, wherever you got to with that exercise, as I say, spend a bit more time reflecting, processing. I think, have you got me back? I think I went for a second there. Hopefully you've got me. Processing, reflecting on this exercise. We are going to be coming back to it sort of time and time again as we go through the program, and it's completely okay actually if your values move around. But how can you sort of tell if you've landed on the right three values? Well, when your 3 values are in alignment, we typically feel balanced, a sense of flow, energized. Things feel sort of good and in alignment for us. So a little bit like a 3-legged stool. If we've got all 3 legs on the ground, it feels quite solid and balanced. However, once we've chosen our 3, if any of our values are out of alignment, this is when things can start to feel a bit tricky. We might feel off balance. Think about that 3-legged stool. If one of the or 2 of those legs is out of alignment, it's going to be wobbly. We might feel a sense of betrayal, particularly we might feel like we've betrayed ourselves if we're acting out of alignment with one of our values, or perhaps somebody is acting against a value that feels really important to us. So it's quite a strong sort of visceral feeling sometimes when our values are out of alignment, either self-inflicted or from somebody else. And in turn, if our values are out of alignment for long enough, this is when we can begin to feel that build-up of stress and overwhelm and burnout. And we're going to come on to talk about more of that shortly. A sort of final point here on values is to consider how and where your values align with your agency values. This can really help to make your day-to-day work feel that bit more meaningful. We absolutely love your agency values of love, magic and power. And how can you look at your personal values and notice how they ladder up into your work values? The more you're able to make that connection and connect with the work that you're doing, with the values of your agency, the greater chance your day-to-day working life is going to feel more meaningful, even when it's busy, even when it's challenging. You can understand how you personally connect with the work that you're doing, and that can make it that bit more easier to navigate through the tricky times. I'm going to hand over to Sarah now. But any questions on that values exercise before we leave it with you to reflect on? If not, over to you, Sarah. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to enter the second part, module 2 now, but I'm just going to sort of invite you to shake it out, because, this is our opportunity to break, shift the energy a little bit before we sort of move into the next section. We'll talk a little bit more about the power of just doing something as quick and easy as that, in terms of creating a circuit break and a bit of a pause. All right, so this section, building emotional agility. As we read, we're going to be exploring how to navigate thoughts and feelings when we are emotionally triggered. So we're going to provide you with some really practical ways to help us when we're in these sort of emotionally charged, high stress times. Let's just acknowledge the industry that you work in and how actually this kind of situation can happen quite frequently, and it can happen sort of out of nowhere. So this section is really helping to build our resilience, really, and build our ability to be agile in emotionally charging situations. So it's in 2 parts. We'll unpack what we mean by emotional agility, and then we'll dig into the stress response. So getting started with emotional agility. But firstly, I'm going to just launch this poll and ask the question, how comfortable do you feel about talking about your thoughts and your feelings amongst each other? So hopefully you can see that. Oh, I've put the wrong one up. Let me do this one. There we go. Hopefully you can see that on the screen. Can you see that? Yeah, okay. I can see you nodding, but I can't actually see
I
it.
think it's the after one that's
Okay, sorry. I'm so sorry. Technical hitch. Please, can I just try and I think I need to end it. Sorry. It'll be all right on the night, they say. Before. Right. Okay, here we go. Tech. So, how comfortable do you feel talking about your thoughts and your feelings with your colleagues? No rights or wrongs here, no judgment. Please be as honest as you can. This is anonymous. Okay, you've nearly all cast your votes. I'll end it here. Oh, there we go. It's all gone. And now let me share back with you. So we've got everything from a 2 through to a 9, and everything in between, which just goes to show how different we all are, and the different levels, comfort levels, when it comes to thoughts and feelings, all valid. And we know that talking about feelings can feel vulnerable. And therein lies the paradox, actually, because vulnerability might feel like weakness, but actually it's strength. And Brené Brown teaches us this. It takes real courage to share parts of us that might not sort of match the perfect versions of us that we like to portray. But as we will discover through this program, this vulnerability is what sort of separates us from robots, but it actually leads us to build those stronger connections with others. So we invite you to notice how you're feeling, embrace the discomfort that you might have as we start to dig into talking about thoughts and feelings in this context, and know that that discomfort is where the growth and development actually happens. And this is very much in line with that agency value of yours, magic. Be uncomfortable. If you find yourself feeling too comfortable, remember that while it might feel comfy and cozy, and not a lot grows there. So, get curious, embrace that discomfort. It's where the growth happens. So what is emotional agility then? Well, Susan David, who's a professor from Harvard, and she's the author of the book of the same name, Emotional Agility, she tells us that emotional agility is about loosening up. It's about calming down and living with more intention. It's about choosing how you'll respond to your emotional warning system. Loosening up, calming down, and living with more intention. This is what it is to be a human leader. It's pausing, it's reflecting, and then it's choosing how we respond. There's so much in life that is out of our control, but what is in our control is how we respond, how we show up to those tough moments. This isn't easy stuff, and I'm sure we can all appreciate that, but also can see why this is so important and essential. But what do we mean by emotional warning system? Again, intuitively, I'm sure you know, but this is when your feelings act like an internal alarm, letting us know that something isn't quite right. So emotions are signals, if we choose to listen to them. And I'm sure we can sort of all relate to this sort of sense of an emotional warning system going off. We can feel it in our body. It feels visceral. But what do we do with those feelings and that information? That's what's really tricky. So take a moment now, this is self-reflection, to consider a time in the last week when your emotional warning system was activated. This could be in or out of work. Close your eyes if it helps. I'm sure we've all experienced something, you know, actually probably daily. And if not, well, lucky you, but maybe you're operating very much in your comfort zone. But I'm sure we can all really relate to this sense of kind of our bodies telling us that something's not quite right. And again, thinking back to that moment, it can sort of induce those feelings again. So sort of be compassionate with yourself as we go through this exercise. Emotions are data, and we're going to discuss and unpack and try and understand what's going on. So in the chat function, what emotions or emotion did you experience when you reflected back on that scenario? What were some of the emotions that you were experiencing in that moment? And again, you might have experienced them again just now. Pop into the chat function. Fear. Well, we're going there. That's at the root of many of our sort of most uncomfortable feelings. Fear, frustration, disappointment, overwhelm, frustration again. Yeah, that feeling of the situation was out of your control. Well, how did that manifest for you? I'm intrigued to know, how did that feel in your body? Sadness, tension. Yes, all very valid. No judgment. These are what we sort of sometimes call kind of more negative emotions, but we don't like to label emotions as either negative or positive, because that in turn brings a sense of judgment. So we prefer to use the language sort of uncomfortable or comfortable emotions or difficult emotions. And they're all very typical, all very valid. And I'm afraid to say it, they are part of what it is to be human. All of those feelings are valid. We're going to experiencing them time and time again. And the more we can sort of accept that's part of the human experience, again, that sort of maybe helps us to sort of let go of that tug of war sometimes that we can have when we feel these uncomfortable emotions. Like sometimes we can put this own judgment on ourselves, like perhaps we're doing something wrong because we're feeling these uncomfortable emotions, but we're not. We're living a normal human life, and these emotions are just trying to tell us something. Okay, so what might they be trying to tell us? Let's read some typical examples of some of the uncomfortable emotions and what they might be signaling. So Susan David tells us that guilt might signal a misalignment with our values. Anger might signal a boundary has been crossed or something feels unjust. Anxiety might warn of a lack of control. We had a few of those come into the chat function, didn't we? Also that something feels threatening to us. So anxiety, fear is at the root cause of anxiety. And then sadness might point to a loss or an unmet need. And just because we feel these things, it doesn't mean that something's wrong with us. Again, I said, you know, we can sometimes heap extra judgment on ourselves. On the contrary, you know, these are sent to tell us something, to help us respond in a way that's more in line with the type of person that we want to be, more in line with our values. So emotions are insight, if only we get detective. And that's the piece that often we don't do. You know, mostly, and I'm speaking from my own experience, but we know this from the research, mostly as humans, we try to avoid these hard feelings. We might numb them, we might ignore them, we might run away from them. And we have those coping strategies to help us do that, whether they're helpful or unhelpful. Growth, ease, emotional agility happens when we can analyze them for what they are and not take them personally. So how do we do that? So I'm going to share the emotional agility framework. So we've adapted Susan David's framework into a 3-step process. So this process involves showing up and noticing and accepting our thoughts and our feelings for what they are as insight to help us, if only we'll listen to them. Step 2 is stepping out, creating space to observe those thoughts, those emotions objectively without judgment. What is this trying to tell me? And then thirdly, moving on. So this is about not getting stuck in the emotion by taking intentional, values-driven action to move forward. Super easy then. Unfortunately, this isn't easy work, and we often say that it is hard to human. It's life's work, but it does get easier with practice. So let's look at each one in turn. So step 1, showing up, noticing our thoughts and our feelings. And this is with that awareness, with curiosity, with acceptance. And I think we should add sort of compassion to this as well. So this is instead of sort of suppressing those or avoiding those emotions, it's acknowledging them, being open to what you're feeling. So let's have a look at the typical buckets of emotions that there are. So there are 6 sort of umbrella terms. This is according to Susan David, and there are lots of many emotions. Brené Brown's work identifies, I think, 87, but she says, again, there are more than that. So, this is ongoing research. There are lots and lots of emotions, but for simplicity, we use Susan David's work here. 6 buckets of emotions with nuanced emotions beneath them. What do you notice about this group of 6 core emotions? Anyone want to come off mute to share their thoughts? What jumps out at you?
Something that jumps out to me is that 5 out of the 6 are what you would call uncomfortable, and only 1 is uncomfortable. So it shows that our brains process negativity quicker than positivity.
Yeah. Shelley, such an interesting, well, you've taken it that step further. You've identified that, yes, only 1/6 of these are, the comfortable or positive emotions, but also you've shared, that, well, we do have a negativity bias. We are on high alert for those negative or difficult emotions, and it is for a reason. It's because they are signals, and they're telling us they're there to help us sort of course correct, if you like. But I think, we live in a society, don't we, where we're always striving to be in that sort of positive bucket, in that happy place. But that is actually toxic positivity, really, isn't it? Let's be realistic. Life is complex. It is complex to be human, and to be human is to experience all of the human emotions. So, as I say, they are, signals to help us course correct and take purposeful action as a result of them. So hopefully that sort of I found that quite liberating, just that knowledge that actually it's not because I'm doing something wrong that I might be feeling all of these difficult emotions. If I just look and understand a bit more why I'm feeling them, then I can move through that emotion really quickly. So let's just take an opportunity to further self-reflect and think back to a time. It could be the example that you used before, but try and bring it into the workplace. So a time when your emotional warning system, remember the definition for that is when our internal system alerts us that something's off. When this went off at work, make sure that this is something you're comfortable sharing, because we're going to go into a breakout shortly. What emotions and maybe thoughts, because some of us sort of think or understand our thoughts more than our feelings. So if that's you, that's okay. But what emotions or thoughts did you experience? Get granular, perhaps try and go beyond the six main buckets. And reflect, yeah, what emotions or thoughts came up for you? And shortly we're going to go into a breakout. So just spend 30 seconds here reflecting on that situation and what emotions came up for you. Step 2, this is about creating space to observe those thoughts, those emotions objectively. What was that emotion trying to tell you? So again, a reminder of those sort of the signals to some typical emotions there on the left of the screen. So, for example, you might have felt or been experiencing anxiety. You know, one of the ways to create space, often we say, I am anxious. So we are sort of labeling ourselves and making it sort of feel quite personal. If we can create a bit of space by saying, I notice that I'm experiencing the feeling of anxiety, and that it's just a signal, and that I don't have to act immediately on this. I can step away and understand and sort of explore as to why. This creates space. It makes it less personal to us. We are not the emotion. So the more we can do to create that space, the more we'll be able to move through that emotion with more ease. So get detective. What's really going on? Remember anxiety there as we read. It might warn a lack of control or something that feels threatening to you. So we're going to pop you into breakouts for 5 minutes, not long here. This is an opportunity to sort of lean into that discomfort. This might feel a bit awkward. You might not have done something like this before. So lean into that discomfort, be awkward together. Share what happened when your emotional warning system went off and what emotions or thoughts you experienced at the time and what they might have been trying to tell you. And a note here that thoughts are not fact. I think we all sort of know this, but oftentimes we can think, oh, just because I've thought something, it must be true. But actually, again, let's remind ourselves that just because we think something, it doesn't mean it's true. And also, feelings don't last forever. Nikki talks of a lovely fact that apparently when we experience a feeling, actually it remains in the body for 90 seconds. Is that right, Nikki? Or is it 60 seconds?
90 seconds.
90
yes,
seconds.
Those visceral emotions that you feel in your body. The science has now showed us that physiologically our body chemistry does change. And it takes 90 seconds to process that emotion, unless we feed it with our thoughts, in which case we then sort of begin to go on loop. So actually feeling that emotion fully, breathing through it, it can pass in sort of 90 seconds physiologically, unless we're feeding it with our thoughts, which of course is so easy and normal for us all to do. But I found that one really, really helpful.
Okay, so we're going to pop you into a breakout for 5 minutes. Select a spokesperson and we'll share a couple of observations when we regroup at the end. Lean into that discomfort, that's normal, and enjoy the opportunity to connect. See you back here in 5 minutes. Okay, welcome back again from a very speedy breakout. How was that for you? Anyone care to share their experience? Perhaps someone that hasn't had a chance to share so far.
I can share mine.
Thank you, Abdul. Sorry,
Um,
I've just stopped at Abdul. I'm sorry.
I don't blame you. You can call me AB, it's easier. I get that a lot.
Awful. That is
I've
terrible.
been struggling my whole life, don't worry about it.
No,
Uh,
that's no excuse. So I'm really
Imagine my,
sorry.
my dad's name is Abdul Aziz, so I have to write the whole thing. Imagine. But yeah, it's fine. I was working on site for National Day, and I was doing the permits for that project. There was these like engineering guys who needed to sort something out. I put them all in a meeting. I was like, "You guys," they kept telling me engineering stuff I didn't know. So I was like, "I'll put you in a meeting. You solve it." And then I did that, and we needed an approval to start building the stage. And the guy who we needed an approval from said خلاص approved, but you need to like submit two things. I was like, okay. I did that, and then I sent him on WhatsApp. I submitted. He said okay. He was like, okay, received. And then the next day we did the same meeting, but the client was there. And then the client was, yes, we're gonna start building today. He was like, but we didn't give you an approval. And then I was like, because I told the client already that they gave us an approval. I was like, I took the laptop from the client. I was like, what? He told me yesterday I have like a chat with you. He said you received everything. He said, yeah, I said received, but not approved. I was like, ah, okay. So yeah, I was angry, and then I solved it my way, but I was angry, and then I got calm, and then I solved it.
Oh, I can sort of feel it myself. My whole body went all sort of chilled then. Yes, I mean, we've all been in scenarios like that, haven't we? Where we
Yeah.
interpreted something and misinterpreted it maybe. But it sounds like you managed it very well in the moment. I mean, how did you? What process did you go through? I'm intrigued.
First of all, I was calm, and then I was like, I have to like tell the client that I'm not lying. This happened. And then
Yeah.
the client called their manager. And then their manager called me, and I was like, yeah, he did say that yesterday. And then he called me and he was like, I'm really sorry. Maybe that came out rude and stuff. I was like, it's fine, but we need an approval. We started building before we asked them, but yeah, I mean, we had to like get the approval.
Well, and actually, there was probably a number of different emotions going on there. So many in the moment, but it sounds like you handled that extremely well. So thank you for sharing that. And actually, that leads quite nicely on to the third step, which I'll move on to shortly. It felt like you used sort of kind of values-based response in that situation. One more example before we move on.
Do you mind if I just jump in very quickly on the AB comment?
Yes, please, Robin.
I was the project lead of the event that AB's talking about and was with him during that whole process. And just to say, I know you probably felt a load of these words that we see on the screen about guilt and anger and all of that. I just wanted to say from a perspective of the lead of the project when talking to the client separately, that AB absolutely smashed the way that he handled that. And everything he did and said in the moment was absolutely perfect. And whilst you probably felt all of those things, none of that came across. And you got the permits that we needed and nothing went wrong because of it. And it was handled like exceptionally. So I just wanted to say that. Thanks.
Wow. Thank you, Robin. That was lovely to hear. And I felt that not being there in the room, the way that AB described that situation, but to have that acknowledgement from Robin, yes, we can't hear these things enough, really. So thank you so much, Robin, for sharing that, and AB for sharing your experience. Okay, I'm going to move on at this point to the third step, which is moving on, and you demonstrated this perfectly, as we've all just heard. This is about taking intentional, values-driven action to move forward when we experience those emotions, particularly those difficult emotions, because you can see how easy it could be to respond in a way that wouldn't be in line actually with our values, and that would be a very human and normal thing. But to be a human leader, to be that step above, to be the very best versions of ourselves, is to do what you did, AB. So I won't spend long on this. This is sort of homework, really, for you to consider. How might you press pause? How might you calm the nervous system, as we heard AB talk about? What helpful truth might you tell yourself, for example? It could be even, thoughts are not facts. I'm not defined by these emotions. I don't need to react straight away. I can choose how I respond. And oftentimes actually just going, I'm really sorry, I got that wrong, putting your hands up and being human and vulnerable is a really, just way to respond in a situation like that you might feel uncomfortable in. And finally, lean into your values. What action might you take to move forward more helpfully? And this is where knowing your values comes in really handy. So, perhaps your value is connection. Maybe you can talk to a colleague or a friend to help you process your emotions. All right, so we're going to move now into the next section, and I'm just going to do this because I'm feeling quite a lot of emotions in my body right now, and so I need to just shake them out. And if anyone else wants to do that, please feel free to. So as we read here, I get the theory. Why is it so hard to put into practice? Many of us might be thinking this. I ask this kind of rhetorically because it is hard, it's awkward, and it takes practice. That is what it is to be human. That is what it means to be a human leader, especially as we consider how stress and the stress response impacts our ability to be emotionally agile. Unmanaged stress can get in the way of us being emotionally agile. It's also worth saying that we might sometimes consider stress to be an emotion in itself, but it's not actually an emotion. It is a state or a response that arises from multiple unprocessed emotions, which might be anxiety, it might be overwhelm, it might be frustration, or even sadness. If these are unprocessed, they can manifest as additional stress on the body. So just as emotions are data and signals from which we can sort of course correct, stress is also a signal, a clue that something we care about is at stake or is under tension. Maybe that's our relationships or our performance at work or our values. And stress is ever present. Actually, it can be really helpful. Oftentimes it can be a hindrance. It all depends on how stress aware we are and how we take accountability for stress. So stress, actually, we do have a lot more control of than perhaps we might think. Important side note, we're not demonizing stress at all. We know that stress helps us oftentimes to perform to our best. It heightens our performance. It helps us reach deadlines. It helps us elevate our performance to a point. So, as I say, stress can be really helpful in the right amount, but if it's not managed, it can lead to unhelpful thoughts, it can lead to unhelpful feelings, and then unhelpful behaviors, which of course means that we're not going to show up in the best possible way. We're not going to be able to problem solve or be creative or collaborate well with others. So to manage stress, we need to understand it and understand what's happening physiologically speaking in the body. So we're going to go through the stress response cycle quite quickly. But this is leaning on theory by Emily and Amelia Nagoski from a book called Burnout. And they liken the stress response cycle to a tunnel. They use the metaphor of a tunnel, which I'll talk through, but it's a biological process that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Oh gosh, oh, something so sorry. It's just got a mind of its own. All those spoilers, I'm really sorry. Don't know what happened there.
That's got your stress response going, hasn't it, Sarah?
Yeah, it certainly has. I don't know what happened. So the cycle distinguishes between stress, which happens in the body, and the stressor, which causes the stress. And we tend to think that the two are the same, and that when the stressor goes, that the stress will automatically go, but that's not the case. We actually consciously have to do something to get rid of the cortisol, the stress hormone that's being released in our body when we experience stress. So, like a tunnel, the stress response has the beginning, which is activated by that stressor. So, a lion for our ancestors, a paper lion for us in modern day, you know, unmanageable workloads, a challenging situation with a client, or lots of change and uncertainty. They sort of all represent threat, fear, danger in us, and our bodies can't distinguish between something that's life-threatening and something that's just sort of challenging our normal sense of state. So the cycle, like a tunnel, has a middle, and this is when the stress response kicks in: fight, flight, freeze, cortisol, adrenaline. Lots of things happen in the body to help us run away from that lion, essentially. So that is great and life-saving in the moment, but the problems occur when we don't then get rid of that cortisol. And that can then build to essentially burnout if we're not managing it out. So we need to consciously end the stress response cycle. This was the sort of game-changing bit really for us when we heard the cycle referred to in this way. So we need to consciously tell the body that we are safe, that we are home. And in that moment, we go into rest and digest. And this is when cortisol can be released from the body. There's lots more science. I'm being very high level at this point. But essentially, the stress response cycle would end naturally for our ancestors when they ran away or fought that lion. Fight or flight, notice there's action, there's movement in those words. Nowadays, you know, we move from one stressful situation into another. We go into lots of these tunnels, but how often do we consciously close the tunnel and in that moment sort of tell the body we are safe? So we read here, in short, stress is like a tunnel. If we go all the way through it, we get to the light at the end. Exhaustion or burnout or illness happens when we get stuck in the middle of the tunnel. That's when cortisol starts to build in our bodies. So we need to tell the body we are safe. We need to intentionally close a stress response cycle, little and often, in order to prevent burnout from happening. So in order to do this, we need to be, first of all, stress aware. Stress can't be managed, you know, if it's going unnoticed. So what can we do to be more stress aware? I'm going to share a couple of really simple tools. The first is a check-in, understanding on a scale of 1 to 10. How would you rate your perceived levels of stress right now? So take a moment, drop into your body, close your eyes if it helps. This isn't to share in the chat function. This is for data for yourself. Give yourself a score, with 1 being low, 10 being high levels of stress.
Is it awareness of the stress, or is it how stressed I am.
So this is a perception. This is how would you rate your stress levels right now in your body? How do you feel? 1 being low levels of stress, 10 being high. So it is self-perception, no rights or wrongs. But again, it's data. And the more you do this, the more attuned you will become, and you'll be able to, give yourself a score quite quickly. So this is a really useful exercise alongside the 1-word exercise, perhaps at the beginning of meetings. It's all data from which you can then help yourself and each other to maybe move that number down if it's too much at the top end, or indeed, perhaps you need to move it up if it's too low at the bottom end. You're maybe not applying enough pressure in order to perform to your best. Again, there's such a lot of nuance in this. So the next exercise to build on this is a little bit more detailed. So I'm going to give you some time in a moment to reflect on your stress warning signature. So we talked about emotional warning signature before. Emotional warning system. That's all those emotions that you're feeling. This is about understanding how stress manifests for you in your body. So stress impacts all the systems in the body, from our muscular system through to our cardiovascular system, neurological system, digestion system, and it impacts us all differently. And I'll share mine in a moment to help us. So how does it physically make you feel? Stress also impacts our thoughts and our feelings, so our psychology. It can make us overthink and over anxious, or it might make us withdraw and become find it difficult to make decisions, for example. And then it can impact how we behave. So it's a really useful exercise to understand ourselves in the workplace, so that we can show up in the best possible way. So here is my example. It comes with the caveat that this isn't the best look. This is about being honest and open and vulnerable and understanding ourselves on our worst days, because then we can become accountable to ourselves and also to each other. So I feel really tight in my upper body. I hold a lot of tension, which is why, exercises like this are really helpful, or even just shaking it out, because it's like a mental release of the physical stress that I feel in my body. In terms of thoughts and feelings, I become sort of intolerant. I can get frustrated and feel sort of disappointed in myself and in others. And behaviorally, I might become impatient and a bit bossy. I'm trying to control situations. I might micromanage, for example. That's a real indicator that I'm experiencing stress, and might become a bit insensitive. So it's not a good look, really, but it's important to understand ourselves on our worst days. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes now to reflect on your stress warning signature. You may need to spend more time on it, but this is just to get you started, really. So you can turn your cameras off if that helps you. Take 3 minutes now to work through your stress warning signature. Okay, turn your cameras on when you've managed to complete that little exercise. And hopefully you found that a really helpful exercise. We certainly did when we did this for the first time a few years ago. And what it does is also, if you share this with those that you work closely with, and actually those in your personal life, it can be really helpful. And if you share it at times when times are good, you can have a little bit of a laugh about it. And also then sort of give each other permission to check in with each other. If you see, it's hard when you're in it yourself sometimes to notice it in yourself, but it's much easier to notice it in others. So if perhaps you see someone else displaying some of their stress warning signature, maybe gently reach out to them and offer some help. So when you find yourself at the higher end of that stress score, 8s, 9, 10s, and you want to reduce that stress, or you're seeing sort of signs of your stress warning signature going in your thoughts, in your feelings, in your behaviors, how can you take action to complete a stress response cycle? Well, there are lots of quick things that we can do. What do you think the quickest way to complete the stress response cycle is? Any thoughts? I've kind of alluded to it. The quickest way to complete the stress response cycle. Okay. The breath. It's the most accessible. The fastest way is movement. So if you think about fight or flight, there's movement in those actions. So that's where it sort of comes from. So when moving the body, you release endorphins, which counteract that cortisol. The breath is the most accessible and probably the quickest way. Sorry, not the quickest, the most accessible, particularly in the workplace. But all of these things are science-backed, and these are shared by all the researchers, but particularly Emily and Amelia Nagoski, as really powerful ways to complete the stress response cycle quickly. You don't need to spend like long periods of time just simply doing something like that. It's the intentionality that's key. That's what signals to the body that you are safe. So the more we can be doing things like this throughout the day, or taking a conscious breath throughout the day, or talking it out with others, or leaning into our creativity, laughing, crying, it's a natural response to stress. These are all things which will help us to calm the nervous system. But then the more that we do of these things, then we can build resilience to cope better with stressful situations. And of course, we've all got our own sort of self-care routines, those things that we do to help us manage stress. So this is about doubling down on those things. So take a moment now. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to make a little pledge. What's one thing that you're going to put into practice every day? And it might only be for 5 minutes. It might only be for 10 seconds in between each meeting that you're going to shake it out. But it's a pledge to yourself, a commitment to you to manage your stress levels day to day so that you can be as emotionally agile, because remember that stress is often unprocessed emotions. So what can you do to be accountable day to day to manage your stress so that you can calm the nervous system and move through with as much emotional agility as possible? And if you feel open to sharing in the chat function, it would be lovely to see your ideas coming through. So as we near the end of the session, I can see we've got a couple of minutes left to wrap this up. A final note on values. We read here that values are the antidote to burnout. They give us the why, a sense of meaning, so that even when work is hard, we feel that it matters. So again, the more we can live in line with our values, the more we will be able to manage stress and be emotionally agile and move through life with more ease. And if we can connect our values up to the agency values, even better still. So as we come to the end, some actions before the coaching sessions, which are coming up over the next few weeks. Get clear on your 3 values. You may need to spend longer on this, but also know that it's okay to change them. These aren't fixed and they're fluid, and they're likely to change as your circumstances change and as you become more aware of yourself. Notice non-judgmentally, of course, with compassion when your emotional warning system is triggered. And then consider, how can you use those 3 steps to to step out, be objective, and move on through values-based action. And you might want to consider sharing your stress response daily non-negotiables with those that you work closely with, so you can be really accountable to yourself and each other. So as we come to the end of the session, before we release you, an opportunity to check out or check back in and then check out. Drop into your body and reflect. What emotions are you feeling right now? Pop 1 or 2 words into the chat function. Thank you all so much for sharing your words and for joining us today. That does conclude. I'm sorry, it's a minute past the hour. It was a whistle-stop tour of many subjects, but we really appreciate all your contributions and your time today.
We will be getting a follow-up email to you along with this recording. Bear with us, it will take a little bit of time just to organise getting that to you. But if anybody wants to circle back to us, hopefully everyone's got our contact details, and we're really, really open to any conversations or questions that you have following today's session. But thank you. I've loved hearing everyone's contributions. I'm feeling all the feelings actually, but yeah, thanks for everyone's generous sharing.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Sarah. Good to see you.
Take care, everyone.
So much, guys. Really enjoyed that.